Good evening. Thanks, Tom. I'm pleased to be participating in your I'll brief you on one small component of your plan, the American Policy Center concept outlined in Griffin's video presentation, An Idea Whose Time Has Come. You can view that video on the sign-up form when you have an hour or so. And the sign-up form is, let's say, the registration form. For the program we're going to be implementing in collaboration with American APC. The link to that form is bit.ly. Okay, to sum up what Griffin was talking about, those without power cannot defend freedom. If you have no power, you are basically powerless, and therefore you have no effect on people that do have power, which is everyone else but you, unless you have some power of your own. Where is the hierarchical power? Office holders, appointed office, hired bureaucrats, entire department of the IRS, and Lois Lerner, big donors, party members, voters. The lowest level is voters. Go below that and say the non-voters. The non-voters are just non-entities. And you can use we can move ourselves up the hierarchy of political power to graduate from the party member level. And that's what the network is about. So precinct organizations are in every state. They're both Republican and Democrat. And despite what anyone else may lead you believe, there are no others. There's no authority to create precinct networks unless you're a Democrat or Republican in all 50 states of the United States. I'll take that back. One Illinois party also can create their precinct network. But it's very rare and limited to the two parties. So those networks that are not supported by the state are unsustainable. They depend on personality. They depend on individual perseverance to make them happen, which means that when the networks or the organization. Let's talk about party structure. The parties have national, state, district, or other legislative districts. Count, which every state has some form of that. The lowest level, we're not looking for people to join up and overnight become state party chairman or national committee members. We're just looking at the lowest level because this is a long-term strategy. It's strategy, and that's where a little bit of habit or stick-to-itiveness or perseverance comes into play. What these party structures is that it creates cones of silence. And the cone of silence is down around from the top down through all the levels down to the precinct level. And if you're not level, the voters themselves, you're pretty much totally out of the communication. It's rare to speak directly to voters because they're not the focus of what the voters are interested in. Top down, but in some states, change it to make it a bottom-up approach. Either way, it's still cones of silence, one way or the other. No, and there's no peer-to-peer involvement at all. In a few states, they have something called county chairmen's associations or things like that, where county members or county officers can get together and discuss things with other county officers, but that's an occasional thing. network could be a weak network. There'll be weak players in it. There will be chairman, and there'll be powerful party chairman. Those individuals can control a lot of things. Networks exist anywhere in the country. Is members from county to from state to state, and that lack of open communication isolates them in their own cone of, and that's what we're trying to break out of here. Reinvent the wheel. We're not going to build another organization. The organization is already there. It's called the Democratic Precinct Organization, or it's called the organization. Joining it is relatively easy. Doing anything in it is a little bit more difficult, obviously. But joining it is where you start. You are not going to start an organization. It costs too much time, too much, and people short if they don't see results, which is what happened with the Ron Paul people. Basically, in 2000, they basically infiltrated, and basically they abandoned it shortly afterward when they didn't get their way. That's not what we're looking for. This is when you come into this time, we're looking for people who will stay with it until it's done. And it may never be done, but your part of it at least will be done. Other people have tried to build these kind of shadow organizations. Jim Connett out of Cincinnati, Ohio, was a leader in this area, but he gets a little bit running for an organization. Sometimes he's doing other. Dan Schlitten, who is widely respected in the precinct movement or organizational area. He's also known as Cold Warrior, and he's out of Arizona. What happened? Schultz is and John McCain basically dislodged most of the Tea Party or non-establishment Republicans in Arizona last summer. So our goal is simply to fully connect the network that already exists, not to build, but we need connections, and that's where the 6 degrees of separation comes into play. You may have heard of the Kevin Bacon game. It's actually a mathematical. It's not just, it's not a theory, but it has some real world. It's also known as the shrinking theory. Even as the world gets bigger, and the ability of people to reach any person in the world becomes almost have this iconic 6 degrees of separation. That's an average. The models show in the 5 to 6 range when mathematically for optimal models. And there's been years and years of studies starting back in the 1920s, going mostly followed up in the 70s, so that where this is a real mechanism to be used. There's 2 approaches: greedy requests and optimal requests. Greedy requests, you blast out to everybody and hope you get a hit. It lacks a lot of because there's too much time, not enough interest. It depends on everybody connecting and everybody following through with where the other method is where you have some knowledge of the connection, and you make the connections, specific people hoping to find connection. A website out there called Muckety does this newsworthy arena. It was built by some reporters, and they find individuals and organizations, and the way they have it, it's a vision. You can pick an most famous individuals or high and people that they're related to through those. So if you find out, who John Kerry is connected with, you could go out there and put him in and see all his connections with different organizations, inside government, and so forth, until in family relations, all kinds of different relations he is ultimately connected with. And you can get a copy. You can use that yourself. You can buy buy the service as well if you have in it. So it comes down to lists. Lists are the lifeblood of direct marketing, this network, precinct network. Creating questions to stimulate making lists, in other words, getting good lists, is what we have area of concentration would be. Created from public information, but what we're talking about here is creating lists. You have a list of people that you are connected with, and many of them are also connected with others. And when you list everyone you know, you're qualified as to how appropriate they are for what we're trying to accomplish. People that are also of similar nature to make lists of their own. And by extending this process out further and further, with each person making other lists, we can build a list through that allows us to connect with many people that we are interested in. And if there's some people that we can't connect through these connections, then we can try to identify who it is that we need to work back from them back to some people that we know. Okay, and proper list, and not just something random or here. A list, and we find the common connections. Then there's going to have to be, we have to prevent bottlenecks and dependency on individuals. The fewer people that are involved, the more dependent it is, and the more bottlenecks. So we have to train people to train other people, or train the trainer. Who to respond when they're needed, because obviously at the time you're needed is when if you let it go, people will lose. It's kind of like when the frying pan is hot, or when it's hot, then you want to take advantage of it. You be aware of some tools: the art of war, of persuasion, and just yesterday we had a little battle in the state of Florida. They had a convention and they elected a new Republican. Ingoglia. And he's also a state representative in the state, and he's the preferred candidate of all the Jeb Bush, and immediately it was out over dramatic. It was very close, but then it was a dramatic, as it usually works out. And the executive director immediately resigned within hours, and the state Senate money out of the Republican Party, leaving it almost penniless. So there you have Ingoglia of the caliber that we're looking for. In other words, he might just be another person with an agenda who wants to, but there is just an example of what causes will never have their ear to this kind of. So in addition to train a trainer, we have to look at sustainability of the network itself. Because we know that power corrupts. So even with the best of intentions, most people will eventually succumb. So your job, your first job, job one, is to find your replacement. In other words, as soon as you want to replace with someone else, whether it's at a different position or when you're holding, you should find somebody who is going to replace you at some point, and so that you can into the position and they become the next person in line. And why are we the alternative to this whack-a-mole, and that is you react to any opponent. Congress is doing something today, call them, write letters, send faxes. Tomorrow, oh, we got a new thing. Oh, Obama's gonna do this. And it falls for you to whack. They're sleep them, and you're not watching them anymore. They're the same old games. So it's rinse and repeat. You keep it. It's a lifetime activity. If you want, the solution is to take your opponent's place in the positions of power. Or most people will agree, and this can to remove power. In other words, to weaken the positions of power so that they're less effective at what they do, so that over the long term, it takes a lot. It's not as easy for people to usurp the positions of power because they're not as interesting as they had been. So limiting the actions of the party itself, changing, limiting the kinds of things that who limit those positions of power and make it unattractive. Whacking the moles, we're going to be implementing this precinct network, and you can be in a position to control things rather than to react to them. Now, it's not going to be day one controlling everything already. So 50% plus one more vote gets to have their way. And the goal is to get enough people into positions of power that you get that leverage. And a lot of times they go away. When they can't play the game anymore, they go away. And in other times, like happened in Florida, like happened in many other states. But they can only fight, and they need the people that can do their broadcast and spend their money, on airtime, which dissipates when the electronic waves cease. So you should something that you create a habit of. You make one small change and repeat it, and make it a habit that serves you. You can register at bit.ly, APC Precinct Net. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. That's from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And what it means, and I've heard this in different ways and over many from many kinds of motivational. What it means, the world treats people who take action than it does who don't take action. Things happen. Maybe not what you wish, not exactly what you wanted, but something happens. You have moved something in the universe, and that's the genius and power and magic. Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Tom. We're doing question.